From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. We begin in Chile, where the appointed governor of the Araucanía region, Luis Mayol, has resigned following the murder of the Mapuche member Camilo Catrillanca. Telesur's correspondent in the area has confirmed his resignation. Mayol has blamed the opposition for, quote, not supporting the change that we are accomplishing in the region. And he says that Catrillanca's case was a common criminal death. So let's take a more in-depth look at what happened to Catrillanca in this report.
It took just until the media left the Mucucuy community for police to once again raid the area.
Even after killing one of us, they continue to harass and criminalize us. We are afraid. They just fired at us with no provocation.
6 people were wounded, among them a pregnant woman who had to be rushed to the hospital. These people say they can no longer tolerate state terrorism.
What's wrong with you? He loads the weapon. He loads the weapon. It's not enough to kill one of us. They want to kill more.
These videos show what the special forces wanted to hide.
The events that led to the death of Camilo Catrillanca were in the memory card of the body cam of the officer who shot him. He initially said he had no camera, but he did, as mandated by law. But he destroyed the memory card. That's unacceptable.
Destroying evidence and obstruction of justice cost 6 officers their job. But mourners know who is responsible for Camilo's death.
Chadwick and Mayol must leave their post. They are responsible for what happened. They treated my child as a criminal. We will not accept this. The government must admit this was a massacre.
The Interior Minister was in a rush to avoid more questions about murder number 16 of a Mapuche, under what is supposed to be a democracy.
Shifting gears now, business leaders in Tijuana are offering jobs to Central American migrants who are part of the caravan. Authorities are also doing their part by providing them with information on how to regularize their situation. Most of the migrants have job skills that the border city wants to take advantage of. At least 3,000 migrants from the caravan are currently in Tijuana.
We are offering around 10,000 jobs for the industry as well as other productive activities in the city, such as restaurants that have approached us.
My goal is not Tijuana, but while I wait for other opportunity, I will have to stay here temporarily.
But as more and more migrants arrive in Tijuana, resources in various shelters are starting to run out. The officials estimate that they can only provide aid for migrants for about 10 more days. Migrants are currently waiting to undergo the lengthy asylum application process.
Right now they have a legal migration process to get into another country, which would take some time. But in the meantime, we are responsible for providing them with basic needs.
Meanwhile, the mayor of the border city of Laredo in Texas worries that the presence of troops will have negative economic consequences for the city. Pete Bussines says that Laredo has a sensitive relationship with Mexico and that the military presence will cause a drop in trade with the sister city of Nuevo Laredo. Mexican consumers account for almost half of Laredo's retail trade.
We do depend heavily on the Mexican shopper, on trade, commercial trade, and the Mexican retail shopper. 40 to 50% of our economy is driven by our Mexican neighbors. I usually say we're tied to the hip. I mean, we're a region. We consider ourselves a region.
The Trump administration will not allow any migrant to cross the border illegally, so says the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Christian Nelson, who has visited the border with Mexico.
Let me first acknowledge what was referenced and what I'm standing in front of. This is a border wall with row upon row of concertina wire. Make no mistake, we are very serious. You will not get into our country illegally.
Turning to other news now, Colombia has requested that Cuba capture the National Liberation Army commander, Nicolas Rodriguez. The government has sent a verbal request to the island for information about the presence of several commanders of the ELN in Cuban territory. Many see this as a sign that the peace talks between the Colombian government and the guerrilla group are not likely to resume soon. Meanwhile, the ELN has published a letter appointing Rodriguez as its new peace negotiator. The letter was sent to the High Commissioner for Peace in Bogotá. Peru's social organizations and trade unions are joining together to demand that the former president, Alan Garcia, not be granted asylum in Uruguay. They want him to face justice. More in this report.
Trade unions joined the protest against the possibility that former President Alan Garcia could be granted political asylum in Uruguay. Protesters marched to the Uruguayan ambassador's home in Lima to make themselves heard.
He stole. He hurt our country. He stole so much money under the guise of large construction projects. He pocketed it all. That's the truth.
Union leaders say that if given asylum, his crimes will remain unpunished, and not only those related to corruption. They also mention the crimes against humanity committed during his first administration in 1986, which included a number of massacres.
This is the second time the justice system has gone after Garcia, but we can't allow him to escape justice again. He must face the punishment for his crimes.
For experts, the fact that Garcia sought refuge in the home of a foreign diplomat points to the fact that he is aware of his culpability.
If the Uruguayan authorities deny his asylum, the prosecutor will be able to immediately order Garcia's arrest, because there is a proof he's trying to evade justice.
Everyone is now waiting for Uruguay's decision in the matter, as there is no set date for them to announce it.
The former president of Uruguay, Julio Maria Sanguinetti, has said that Garcia's asylum request presents a challenge to the current government. Sanguinetti explains that this is a complicated issue because of the diplomatic relationship between both countries. The former president also says the government has to evaluate all of the elements of the request before it can make a decision. We're going to take a short break now. More news in a few.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur. Welcome back. Brazilian President-elect Jair Bolsonaro has named his health minister.
Luis Enrique Mandetta is a 53-year-old pediatric orthopedic doctor. Mandetta has criticized the hiring of thousands of Cuban doctors in the public health sector under the More Doctors program. The program was launched in 2013, but Cuba withdrew its personnel last week after Bolsonaro's comments. The president-elect has already named 10 of his ministers.
In the case of Mr. Luis Enrique Mandetta, he had the support of the Parliamentary Health Front, of the Santas Casas, the Non-Profit Hospital Confederation, of philanthropic hospitals, nurses, the Federal Medicine Council, the Doctors Association. So almost everyone in a big part of the healthcare sector chose him.
The third day of the Forum on Critical Thinking is kicking off in Argentina this Wednesday, just a week ahead of the G20 meeting in that country. The theme of the event is fighting for equality, social justice and democracy. During the four-day meeting, leaders are discussing social issues affecting the region. Earlier on day 2 of the forum, the president of the Association of Grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo, Estrella de Carlotto, recalled the crimes committed by the military dictatorship in Argentina. This as she explained the importance of resistance.
If you didn't abide by the sinister project, you were an enemy. I think some military said he had intention of killing 3 million people. They couldn't do it because they found a lot of resistance. We suffered the loss of a daughter, a son, a husband, and a brother. We don't stay in our house, we go out.
And our correspondent Jorge Gestoso is covering the event and has interviewed the Dutch sociologist Saskia Sassen, who has specialized in globalization and migration. She says a new emerging group of the super rich is widening the gulf between the haves and the have-nots in the cities.
And for instance, if you take the city as a critical space, where more and more people live in cities, once you have this type of extractive, and once you have these 30 to 40% of very high income people, you notice that in a city. The 1% were always there. But once you have up to 40%, like in a city like New York, of very high income people that want, where before there were 3 families living in a building, they want the whole building for themselves and just one person. That is noticed. So the modest middle classes, the doctors, the nurses, they have to move to the suburb. There are a whole set of transformations that come with that.
Our correspondent also spoke to the Swedish sociologist Goran Thebon, who warned of increasing inequality within countries.
Both in terms of life expectancy and also in terms of income, cities can be very unequal. My most worrying example, I think, is Johannesburg, the city of Johannesburg in South Africa, where the income inequality is within the city, is about the same as between the households of the whole world. So it's cities can harbor enormous inequalities living close by each other.
Argentina's government has failed in its attempt to strip the former president, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, of her parliamentary immunity. Only 26 of the required 37 lawmakers turned up for Tuesday's Senate session. This means that the former president and senator will retain her parliamentary immunity for the rest of the year. Fernández de Kirchner is accused of covering up the alleged involvement of senior Iranian officials in the 1994 bombing of a Buenos Aires Jewish center. Cab drivers in Ecuador have protested over the ride-sharing mobile applications Uber and Cabify. They say that these applications increase insecurity and violate labor rights. The president of the National Assembly has received a proposal to reform the transportation and road safety law, which includes sanctions for mobile ride-sharing apps.
These foreign applications need to be shut down. Over the past 3 months, they have destroyed our business. There are some co-workers who can't afford to pay for their cabs, and they have to give them back to the dealerships. We will continue fighting until these applications are banned.
The British rock star and founder of Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, has visited indigenous communities in Ecuador's Amazonian region. He's showing support to the communities affected by decades of oil pollution by multinational Chevron Texaco. Waters told the media that the law must serve us all and not just the Chevrons of the world. He also spoke about the situation of the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange. He said the current Ecuadorian government should defend his right to asylum as the previous government had. And Telesur sat down for an exclusive interview with Roger Waters. Make sure you watch it this Wednesday at 1600 Los Angeles time, 1900 in Quito, and midnight in London. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has celebrated the bicentenary of the Declaration of the Republic and the struggle to gain freedom and independence, a battle he says continues.
Venezuela today is fighting a huge battle for our freedom. We are giving a tremendous fight for our right to exist. We are giving a tremendous battle against imperialism. The same of John Bautin's Erwin for a right to develop our own political, economical, social, cultural, republican model, for a right to be independent today in the 21st century.
Business leaders have gathered in Venezuela to evaluate the strides made by the government's economic recovery plan. Let's find out more in this report.
300 international entrepreneurs gathered in Caracas to discuss investment and production in Venezuela. The positive results of the government's economic recovery plan are already being felt.
We have seen their strategies to destabilize our economy. You can be for or against their government, but we can't deny there are criminal, systematic, and meticulous efforts to destabilize our economy and hurt our country.
The goal for 2019 is to expand production and support Venezuelan companies.
Foreign investors see investment opportunities in Venezuela. They see that we are open to dialogue. They see that we can be trusted, that we are peaceful. They see Venezuela as full of benefits.
What was clear during this meeting is the impact that Venezuela's new economic model has had, serving as a shield against foreign mafias that support an economic war against the country.
There's a huge fuel deficit in Colombia that will be hard to overcome, and it's getting worse due to the amounts of fuel that's smuggled out of Venezuela. We have calculated that the fuel that's been stolen equals $12 billion and has sped up the attempts at intervention from Colombia.
During this meeting, clear goals were set to support the country's economy. 3 months after this new plan started, another victory has been the use of the country's cryptocurrency, the petro. Many believe that Venezuela is on its way to economic sovereignty.
Dozens of toys and stuffed animals have been placed outside the Colombian Congress to protest child sexual abuse. Demonstrators are demanding that abusers be brought to justice and that victims receive the support that they need. On average, a child is sexually abused in Colombia every 30 minutes, and only 3% of the cases go to trial, according to the NGO Aldeas Infantiles.
The toys are to raise their voices, demand justice, demand better services, and also demand specialized attention for families on behalf of so many children who have been victims of sexual abuse.
For us, as a family, it was very difficult to have to see our daughter suffer. Our daughter is very strong emotionally, because she knew that the person she loved the most, her father, hurt her.
Mexico's iconic amphibian is struggling to survive as dire threats to the last wild place it calls home are occurring. The tiny amphibian is disappearing from its home in the muddy canals of southern Mexico City. But by 2020, there may be none. Biologists have launched a rescue mission as polluted water and predatory fish are its main enemies. We'll take a short break now. More news after this.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. Telesur documentaries. Sundays. Only on Telesur.
Turkey says it may ask the United Nations to launch a formal inquiry into the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi if Saudi Arabia fails to cooperate with Ankara regarding the case.
As we cannot find the answers to the questions that I have just mentioned, we don't think the cooperation with Saudi Arabia is at a level where we will want it to be. It is our right to get more information. If there is an impasse or the investigation comes to a standstill or we cannot fully cooperate, then we might have to apply for an international inquiry.
But the U.S. president is standing with Saudi Arabia and is downplaying the Saudi Crown Prince's alleged role in the Khashoggi killing. The CIA has concluded that the Saudi Crown Prince personally ordered the journalist's murder.
Because it's America first for me. It's all about America first. We're not going to give up hundreds of billions of dollars in orders and let Russia, China, and everybody else have them. It's all about, for me, very simple. It's America first. Saudi Arabia, if we broke with them, I think your oil prices would go through the roof. I've kept them down. They've helped me keep them down. They didn't make a determination. And it's just like I said, I think it was maybe he did, maybe he didn't. They did not make that assessment. The CIA has looked at it. They've studied it a lot. They have nothing definitive. And the fact is, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. If you look at Iran, what they've done, they've been a bad actor. You look at what's happening in Syria with Assad, with hundreds of thousands of people killed. We are with Saudi Arabia. We're staying with Saudi Arabia. And by the way, just so everybody, I have no business whatsoever with Saudi Arabia. Couldn't care less.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has said that a strong response to Khashoggi's murder could harm what he called the long and historic relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia.
So as the President said today, the United States will continue to have a relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They're an important partner of ours. We will do that with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, its people. That is the commitment that the President made today. It's that straightforward. By the way, this is a long, historic commitment and one that is absolutely vital to America's national security.
With 13 million people at risk of death by starvation in Yemen, health workers in the Aslam region are making a desperate plea for help. Many families are now forced to eat leaves to ward off starvation. This as the blockade continues to smother humanitarian deliveries of food and medicine. According to the UN, one Yemeni child under the age of 5 dies every 10 minutes from otherwise preventable diseases and severe malnutrition. At least 55 people have been killed in a suicide bombing near Kabul in Afghanistan. The blast also left about 80 injured. It happened during a meeting of religious scholars who were celebrating the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. No individual or group has yet claimed responsibility for the deadly attack.
When I heard the explosion, I thought it had happened behind the waiting hall. People ran and said there were other suicide bombers. There were several dead and wounded. Security forces came fast to the scene of the suicide attack.
The award-winning Bangladeshi photographer and activist and has been freed after 100 days in detention. Sahidul Alam was arrested in August, accused of making provocative statements to the press and in social media during the student protests. Alam said he hoped his release can be a signal of freedom for many others. A gunman has kidnapped an Italian volunteer and shot 5 people in Kenya. Police informed the man that the man attacked a village in the south and kidnapped a 23-year-old woman who was volunteering for an Italian charity. Another 5 people, including children, was shot and injured. This is the first abduction of a foreigner in 6 years since a series of raids blamed on Somali Islamist militants. And violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo has disrupted the start of December 23rd presidential campaign. The eastern city of Bussines has seen a surge in violence in the lead up to the polls. The United Nations has already warned that ongoing violence could disrupt the vote. And there could be another critical threat to the December elections: Ebola. The DR Congo is still fighting to contain the virus after the last deadly outbreak. According to the World Health Organization, efforts to stem Ebola in the Bussines region were suspended due to clashes. And some Central African forest rangers cannot focus only on protecting the dwindling wildlife population. They also have to protect themselves from heavily armed rebel groups. The rangers say they often find themselves in the line of fire, targets of the mainly Muslim Seleka militia. Added to their woes are poachers who prey on the animals they seek to protect.
This was a bullet that hit me during a confrontation with the Sudanese. It struck me from behind.
In 40 years, we've gone from about 2,000 or 3,000 giraffes to maybe less than 10 today. These missions are dangerous.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusyourenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you for watching.